Detroit Lions are ramping up for the 2024 season by kicking off training camp starting today. And there's already a couple players that are making waves, one on the defensive side and one on the offensive side. Stay tuned as we break down which players those are and exactly how they stood out in today's training camp practices. What's going on, Lions fans? Welcome to the Pride of Detroit YouTube channel. I'm Miko, one of the lead content creators for the Pride of Detroit YouTube channel. And today we are going to be diving into the first day of Lions training camp practice. This is a day that I'm sure a lot of us have been waiting for. The Lions officially getting back on the practice field and putting in the work that's going to be so important and so vital to them being able to, again, start to climb back to where they were last year and hopefully surpass the NFC Championship and get to a Super Bowl. The work that is needed for that to happen has to start now. And it's a really, really exciting day. And there are so many good things to come out of today's practice. Now, with that in mind, because there is so much coming out from today's practice, I'm not going to be able to cover it all. So if there is more information that you want to know about what happened at practice, who possibly stood out that I'm not going to talk about, I definitely encourage you to go check out the prideofdetroit.com website. There will be an observation article written over there. Also, if you want even more insight, like a firsthand account of what happened at practice, I really encourage you guys to subscribe to the Pride of Detroit Direct subscription plan. It's about $50 for the year, but there is also a promo code, with the promo code being podcast25, that you can use to actually get a little bit of a savings. But that is actually going to get you a firsthand account from Jeremy and Eric themselves, who were at practice today. And they are going to cover a lot of things that I'm not going to be able to today, mainly because I don't want this video to be 40 minutes, but that's exactly what you will get from them. They cover every single, both offense and defense. They highlight the players that stood out the most, what players were a little disappointing. They even break down a couple plays. It's really worth the investment if you want that extra level of insight into these practices. Now, with that out the way, let's dive into two players that I think had an amazing practice today, and it really could be a good sign for things to come for both the defense and the offense. The first player that I'm going to mention is someone that actually I haven't talked about a lot this offseason, and I'm not going to lie to you guys, he kind of flew under the radar for me, and that player being Emmanuel Moseley. Now, with the Lions kicking off practice today, there were a couple players that weren't able to practice due to them being on the NFI list. Now, some of these players, like Brian Branch, are players that we know are actually dealing with injuries, but others like Carlton Davis and Amik Robinson were a little bit of surprises yesterday. But it's more than likely related to some sort of conditioning test that they probably didn't pass. But them missing out on this practice allowed Emmanuel Moseley to get an opportunity to get a couple reps with the first team. And specifically, the thing that's interesting about Emmanuel Moseley as he's recovering or has recovered from that ACL tear is where he was lined up in these practices. Last year, we were constantly talking about Emmanuel Moseley possibly being the CB2 to then Cam Sutton being CB1. Now going into this training camp, or at least as far as today's practice was concerned, Emmanuel Moseley was taking a lot of snaps at the nickel position, which is a very interesting thing because, like I said, last year, most of us thought he would be an outside starting corner. But instead, when the Lions rolled out and did some of their 11-on-11 workouts today, they had Terrion Arnold at CB1, Ennis Rakestraw Jr., which is also very interesting, working on the outside, and then Emmanuel Moseley getting some nickel work. Now, Emmanuel Moseley does have some experience of working at the nickel, but it's definitely a sign that they want to get him more familiar with the position and at least give him more opportunities, possibly as the season kind of gets closer, to have ways of getting on the field. We've talked at length about how Brian Branch is probably going to get more snaps at the safety, possibly still getting some snaps at the nickel, but probably going to be playing a lot more at safety, which is going to open up more opportunities for other players to play at the nickel, whether that be Amik Robertson, whether that be Ennis Rakestraw Jr. And now apparently that's also going to include Emmanuel Moseley as well. And that is something that is interesting, but also something that to be very excited about because it, again, showcases the versatility that Aaron Glenn is going to have to work with on this defense. Emmanuel Moseley has the size to play on the outside, just like Terrion Arnold and Ennis Rakestraw and Carlton Davis. But for him to have that level of versatility, it just gives you that ability to be able to mix and match a little bit, or be able to match up the way that you want to going into any game. And that's something that Morgan and I talked about even in our last video, is that having all of these different types of players in all of their different body types and all their different experience, you don't have to all the time go into matchups and not necessarily be prepared. You don't have to just be like, hey, Terrion, you're going to be on this side. Carlton Davis, you're going to be on this side. And X, Y, and Z. You can actually mix and match a little bit more. You can have Brian Branch play the nickel one series, and then the next series, maybe he's playing safety. But for Emmanuel Moseley, first and foremost, to be healthy enough to be out there on the first day of training camp was something that I wasn't even aware of. Like I said, it kind of went under the radar. And once, kind of getting these updates, like, no, he's on the field and he's actually taking snaps at nickel, it kind of dawned on me that, like, yeah, he was never reported on the NFI list or anything like that. So it's, again, a really good sign for him. It helps him get reacclimated to playing football because he hasn't obviously been on the field or been healthy the last couple of years. But it's a big benefit to this defense. And it's also a big benefit to these young players as well, that while you have Ennis Rakestraw Jr. and Terrion Arnold manning the outside, you have this veteran on the playing the nickel position that can still help these young guys out because he's been in their position. He's played the outside corner position. He's played in the NFL at a high level. So he can still impart some wisdom while still learning his position at the same time. Also, don't want to completely breeze past the fact that, like, Ennis Rakestraw Jr. getting some opportunities to play outside corner is awesome, because this is where I primarily wanted to see him play when the Lions drafted him. But a lot of, like, OTAs and rookie minicamp, we were hearing him playing a lot of nickel. And I don't think it's that the Lions don't want him to play nickel or they don't want to try him out there, but I do think they want to get him comfortable with both, and honestly probably even gauge how well he plays both so that they understand what they have to work with. I fully expect by the time the season kicks off that Carlton Davis and Terrion Arnold will be your starting outside corners, but continuing to develop Ennis Rakestraw Jr. as an outside corner, I believe, is just as important, because I think he too has the size, the athleticism, the play style, because he's very, very physical, to be a good, possibly CB2 to Terrion Arnold CB1 as this team kind of goes. Now, with that said, that's the defensive side of the football. And that's a player, like I said, in Emmanuel Moseley, that I kind of forgot about. He kind of went under the radar a bit for me, just because there have been so many other players in that secondary that we focused on. On the flip side, though, when we start talking about the offense, this is a player that I think all eyes are going to be on him throughout training camp and throughout this season. And that person being Jameson Williams. Jamo is finally going into this season. He doesn't have any injuries currently. He also doesn't have any type of trouble or suspensions pending. So he's getting able to go through this season. And at least as the way things look right now, has the potential to at least start to build off the type of season that he wants to have going into year 3. And as far as day 1 of training camp goes, he's definitely going about it the right way. Last year in training camp, again, all eyes were on Jamo once again because he was actually healthy, but it wasn't always like positive things coming out. He was still definitely getting acclimated to Jared Goff, getting acclimated to the offense. And that came with some struggles, that came with some drops, that came with him, his routes not always being clean, or even him running the correct routes on certain occasions. Fast forward to today, and you can tell that he's grown immensely. Reports are coming out that he was actually just amazing with his body control, amazing with his routes running, didn't, by anybody's account, drop a single pass, was still able to do what he does best, which is when he got the opportunity in 11-on-11s to take to run a deep route, he did it in such a way where if you blinked, you probably missed it. Easily, making the likes of Terrion Arnold and Ifeatu Melifonwu just look a tad bit slower than him. And those are two really good athletes. But as we all know, when it comes to Jamo, that is one thing that we can always count on, is that his athleticism, his speed is going to show up at the best moments. To now see that his hands, that his route running, just that his approach to the game is kind of catching up to what we already know his physical talent to be. Again, much like with Emmanuel Moseley, this is something to be so excited about, because you know what you have in Amon-Ra St. Brown. You have a top 5 wide receiver that's constantly open, that's constantly going to put pressure on defenses in both the short, medium, and even on some of these deeper routes. You have a Sam Laporta that is a monster on the short routes and a monster in the intermediate. You have Jahmyr Gibbs. You have David Montgomery. Now that Jamo seems to be, again, at least as far as the first day is concerned, kind of putting it all together, really showcasing that high level of playing ability that had him so sought after in the draft. This is something that, again, this is a Lions offense that is already considered by a lot of people across the league to be a top 5 offense. If you're able to get your former first round pick, geez, I'm probably talking a little too fast myself right now, but if you're able to get your former first round pick to finally start tapping into that potential and really start to be a consistent player that we started to see a bit last year, and he's able to, again, kill it in the deep routes because you know that's what he's going to be able to do, but also be incorporated in the run game on some of these end arounds, or even doing some of the little things that sometimes get overlooked, like blocking, or even something that I think gets, I guess, overlooked by fans at times, which is Jamo's ability to have great run after the catch. If he can start even catching shorter passes and being able to take those and being able to pick up first downs and turn those into house calls, this offense is just going to thrive even more. And this team, and as a result of that, is also going to be able to put up more wins than they were so those are two of the biggest players that I think shine the most on today's practice. Like I was talking about earlier in this video, if you want more insight, if you want to know, like, hey, okay, but how did the defensive line look? What about the offensive line? Who's taking reps at offensive tackle 3? How does James Houston look, et cetera, et cetera? If you want that information, like I said, I strongly encourage you to check out the prideofdetroit.com website. There will be an observation article over there, but also in the meantime, you can also go ahead and subscribe to Pride of Detroit Direct. Go ahead and get that subscription, and Eric and Jeremy will absolutely lay out everything that they saw in practice today. And there's some good stuff in there. Like I said, there's some stuff about James Houston. There's some really good nuggets about Hendon Hooker if you're interested in that type of thing. Also, another, somewhat casual update of Aiden Hutchinson. Spoiler alert, he's still a monster. But if you want that next level of insight, I highly suggest you go ahead and subscribe to Pride of Detroit Direct. There will be a link in the description of this video. Go ahead and click that link, get subscribed, and get that additional insight into what's going on at Lions training camp this year. But with all of that said, I'm Miko. Thank you guys for taking the time to watch. Be sure to hit that like button, hit that subscribe button, hit that notification bell, and stay tuned as we continue to have more training camp observations come out the rest of this offseason.